as we said that empirical review is 2.3, which means the third subsection of your literature review. Because even the way you organize your work has an implication on the quality of the work you are presenting. When people look at the way you have organized your work, and it is not rhyming well, flowing well, somebody cannot follow up well, it means the quality of the written content is also not good. Because if you can organize the work well, it is one sign that the person is really organized, and therefore is smart upstairs. So like we said that this section deals with the identification, analysis, and discussion of previous empirical studies related to study variables, with the objective of finding out what other scholars found out or what did they discovered and what knowledge gaps they left for your study to fill. In brief, you tell us what did the other people or other researchers find out, as in saying whether they found out a significant relationship or not, a positive relationship or not, a strong relationship or not. That is what you have to answer. Especially if your study was a correlational study. And if it wasn't a correlational study, still we need you to tell us what did the other researchers find out. Not necessarily in terms of relationship, but the findings they have presented, as we are going to discuss down here. The same steps we said previously are the same steps you go through. You put down the headings of your empirical review as we have put them down here. You can see one heading is the empirical review, the independent variable, the empirical review on the dependent variable, and the empirical review on the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. If your study did not have both independent and dependent, we are also going to see that case on the next slide. Now, having known that these are the subsections, you begin with the first. For example, if you are looking at the findings on the independent variable, I hope that day you may only do that job. So you don't mix. You go to read with a target that today I want to find out empirical reviews on the independent variable. So, and in this case, you will identify the articles, research articles. As we hear empirical review, they must be research-based articles with the findings and the conclusions. Yet for theoretical and conceptual, you can review any document which has talked about that concept, whether it is a research-based or not. But here, only research-based articles That's why journal articles here work a lot, research reports of people work a lot, and dissertations and theses are the ones we are looking for. Except for cases where we have institutional reports which have talked about findings and data on that variable. Those institutional reports can be, for example, the World Bank, the UN has a report, for example, on the trends on household size. The average household size in Europe, the average household size in Africa, the average household size, the standings, the empirical standings as of now or the previous few years. Except in that case where a report is for an institution and it was compiled from different data collected. That one can also apply here. So we said discuss the empirical findings related to your IV from previous researchers. You get these findings from any part of the world. Meaning that if you are doing a study in Uganda, you are not only looking for researchers from Uganda. Actually, you must mix. If you only look for researchers from Uganda, we shall say your presentation of the literature review is skewed. It is bending. It is biased. You don't bring out the picture of the world. So let it be a mixture of any part of the world. And if it is from other parts of the world and it is ignoring any study from Uganda, which is your study context, it is also skewed. So it should be a mixture. And in any case, you show the gaps these previous reports left. You do the same for the empirical findings on DV, and you do the same for the empirical findings on the relationship between the IV and DV. But specifically, we said that for this section, if your study is correlational in nature, a correlational study is a study which has both IV and DV as from the title. When you read the title, you see that the researcher wants to find out the relationship between the IV and DV. So here we said the researcher should give empirical findings that show the relationship between the IV and DV, mainly from research reports and journal articles. You may break down this section of literature review into subsections according to your objectives, especially if you used a many-to-one or a one-to-many linking strategy. We said that some researchers prefer to only follow this approach in conducting their empirical review, meaning that they will ignore the other two subsections we have previously indicated. Even in this case, where the study was not correlational, the researcher will do the empirical review following the objectives. So objective number one will have an empirical review section where the researcher presents the different findings, the previous findings about it, and so on. So we have provided a case following this approach, but almost the same case can work even in the other previous sections. That is 2.3.1 and 2.3.2, as we are going to see. Now, as we are saying that for each section under empirical review, each section we are talking about, for each section, a paragraph you write there should be a combination of the following aspects. Although the order of these aspects may not strictly be followed, but what matters is that the key issues we have put in this paragraph should also appear in your paragraph, even though the order may be interswitched. So this is how a paragraph should look like. Certain issues, certain points that should come out in that paragraph. As we are learning how to write or how to read, because one of the important aspects of a PhD is learning how to read and learning how to write. In other words, when you go to do a literature review, you go when you know what you are looking for. It is very possible for you to read a paper and you get converted to the ideas that the paper is presenting. Yet those ideas, however good they may sound, do not give you a flow of how you want to review your literature. So if you find out that you go to do literature review when you don't know what you are looking for, your literature will look disorganized. It will not have a focus because it will just be a marriage of any interesting idea. But that is not how we do things. So, in other words, the paragraph should have a surname of the author or the researcher, a year of publication, sometimes in brackets, the purpose of that study you are reading, what was it? Indicate the place where that study was conducted, probably a city, a country, or a district. Indicate the major findings of that study. Indicate the implications. Now, the implications of those study findings are your researcher's addition. In other words, it is you to derive these implications. And that is the discussion you are conducting of the literature review. The discussion you conduct, the literature review discussion, should bring out the findings of the different authors, the different researchers. In other words, those findings which are similar and those findings which are different. Those findings in favor of your study hypothesis and those findings which are not in favor of your study hypothesis. That is where the discussion is rotating to remain focused on a point of a given objective. So at the end of each section of empirical literature review, you bring out the empirical gaps left out by those previous researchers that your study is going to fill. These empirical gaps are like in form of a question that after going through all the findings of the previous researchers, do you have any question, any pending question, or you think that Alhamdulillah, all your questions have been answered by the previous researchers, and that means your study is not needed because you don't have any question to ask. So after reading all what others have discovered, do you have any question? Do you have anything to ask? Do you see anything not answered by the previous findings? That will be your gap. We say the critical reader and writer under empirical review should make sure that each paragraph discussed should document different empirical studies on one of the factors or one point, then followed by discussion and interpretation of those findings by the researcher. By telling us the implications of those findings, their weaknesses, their strengths, their similarities, and their differences. So this is what we call the critical review, where you bring the work, where you bring, in other words, where you do what you call critique, but not criticizing. You are bringing the findings of previous researchers to a critique, but not criticizing them. This is a sample of a paragraph under empirical review. You can read through it and see whether we have brought out the other key issues. There are 6 we talked about in this paragraph. We said how a paragraph of empirical review should look like. Read through this sample, a sample paragraph, and see. Once you do that, you will be following. And as I said, you need to read over and over, not once, not twice, because you are learning, and learning is a journey. Learning how to write, learning how to read, learning how to discuss is a journey. We also have another sample here. You will go through it. You also have another case demonstration. You can go through it. And another one, a paragraph of empirical review, considering maybe another construct of the work. We have a task here. It is also a group task. This one is ready for use. There are 8 groups which I want you to formulate and do this presentation. 8 groups. Each group has been described. So what I'm going to do is right now send this presentation again to you. Please, I'm sending it via here. Download it before we end the session, because after ending the session, it will not be accessible. So let me end the slideshow. Then I go and attach this so that I'll be able to send you this document. So if anybody has a question, please, you can put it now. Otherwise, I'm attaching this presentation so that people can look at the concept, the task number 3 and number 4. I've already attached this before. I'm just now attaching it again. For those who can, please download it as we are still on. Let me know those who have been able to download it so that we go on. Otherwise, let me accept some questions here as the document is attaching. Any question regarding so far the discussion of literature review we have given, more so this part we have ended with, the empirical review part. Waiting for your
Prof, my question is on the contextual framework. I'm trying to find out whether the contextual framework is the same as the empirical review.
Conceptual, contextual. Because